Whoops. Sorry, Jeffrey. We got off to a rocky start tonight. But welcome to the Q&A. Welcome to the Q&A. I'm Tony Defio. That's Jeffrey Benedict. How you doing, Jeffrey?
I'm doing great, Tony. I'm doing great.
I forgot to take it off
start
the
to
loop.
the show.
Yes.
It was an auspicious start.
I Kenny Pickett the start of the show, apparently. My first time doing a Q&A music, so I didn't progress through my reads, and I just took off and ran with it. But that's okay.
It's okay. It's still training camp. We'll just,
right. We don't even have pads on yet. Well, welcome everybody to Q&A. I'm Tony Defio. That's Jeffrey Benedict, as I probably already said, but I can't remember now. So is this the last installment of the Q&A? I'm not sure.
I don't know if it's continuing or not. I don't know. They don't include me in the big decision making.
Yeah, me either. I don't know. I just noticed this is the third one of the summer, and I can't believe we are on the eve, as we're doing this show right now, on the eve of the Steelers putting pads on and playing football for real. What are your thoughts on camp so far?
I think everyone who hasn't played well so far should be cut. They should have drafted entirely different players who would have been better in practice, except for the guys who are doing good in practice.
Right.
Those guys are great. And the guys who aren't doing anything in practice, cut them all. And let's find people on other teams who practice well.
Wow, that reminds me of the many text messages I've received since Wednesday. It's apparently we all think alike, because I've been saying that all summer. They need to get better players. And so far, I guess
Every practice the Steelers have, they should pick 5 players and cut them. They should be like, whoever did the worst that day, just cut. Mason, first throw of practice, you threw an interception, hit the showers, kid. We're bringing, we got backup. We got Jimbo up in the stands. He's going to throw the next pass.
Well, if that was enacted this week, Mason Rudolph would still be on the team. From what I understand,
yeah, he'd be like the only player. It'd be like him and George Pickens. And
oh my gosh!
I think TJ Watt's dominated.
Well, TJ Watt, he's exempt. He doesn't. I mean, I think he's built up so much goodwill over the last 5 years. He can make a year's worth of mistakes and nobody would care.
Oh, he would care. He could go out in the field and like lay down and just be like,
right? Yes.
What? It's practice. Yes. I don't care. And people would be like, TJ, it's all right.
Still be better than
honestly, if he did that, he's TJ Watt. Who cares? Right. You know what he's going to do week 1. Right. You know what he's going to do week 2. You know what he's going to do all the way through the season. It doesn't matter what he does in practice.
It doesn't matter. 19.5 sacks. That's what I'm predicting. That's what he's going to have. He's not going to break the record, but his 19.5 will be negated, will be offset by Alex Highsmith's 11.
How many weeks of practice have we? How many practice days have we had so far? Something like 4.
4.
And I've heard so far TJ Watt is yet to tackle a quarterback.
Well, that's because he's gotten fat off that rich contract.
Yes. He got that record. Now he doesn't care anymore. He's not tackling any quarterbacks.
He won the award finally, Defensive Player of the Year award. Now he doesn't care. So, but I don't know about you, and I kind of made fun of Steeler fans on Twitter today, but I am so super excited about George Pickens. I can't believe. I mean, I realize it's football in shorts, and a receiver is always going to look good. Usually, he better look good in football in shorts. But George Pickens, I mean, he looks like somebody that, what they said about him after the draft, that if he wouldn't have torn his ACL at beginning of 2021, he would have been the first receiver picked. Now that's what he's looking like through 4 days, but it's very exciting. What do you think of him?
Oh, it's fantastic seeing the catches he makes.
Yeah.
It's really good. But I always hedge my bets with rookies, because if you watch those routes he's running, those defensive backs are letting him off the line. They're not jamming each other. They're not pushing and shoving in the routes. I think he's a guy that shows that on college film, but that's what I want to see. I want to see these guys try and bump him off his routes, because I always go back. I mention this all the time in my other shows, but Justin Hunter, when the pads were off and no one was hitting each other, looked like Randy Moss.
Yeah.
And then as soon as someone could touch him and push him and shove him, he completely disappeared. and he couldn't do anything. So I don't think that's going to happen to George Pickens. But as good as George Pickens looks, we still haven't seen him actually play football as a Steeler yet.
That's a good point. And you know your X's and O's. You're very good. You have an awesome grasp of that part of the game. So do you think that he has that in him to be that kind of guy, to get off his blocks and be physical? I know he loves to block and he loves to fight people in college. That was part of his reputation. But do you think he has the ability to be that physical?
Oh yeah, I from what we saw in college, I think he's that guy. I think he's gonna be that guy. I don't really have concerns about him. Anytime rookie receivers do well at this time of year, it's always, I just have this like twitch in the back of my, twitch right in the back of my neck that I'm like, they haven't done it for real yet. Right. Don't get too excited. We'll see how he does. I think he's going to be fantastic. I think he is going to be a big explosive part of this offense, especially downfield throws. It's hard to take anything too seriously when all of our history, all of my stats I like to bring up, all come from Ben Roethlisberger, right? And I can cite you how so many stats on how important a deep ball threat is to Ben Roethlisberger,
right?
But I don't know how important he is to Kenny Pickett or Mitchell Trubisky in the Matt Canada offense. I don't know,
right? Yeah,
it's still a great thing. It's still a great thing to have. So it's a weapon you'd rather have than not have.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And what do you think he brings to the table as far as the receiver room that, for example, Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool and Anthony Miller and those guys, or in Calvin Austin, although he's a rookie too. What do you think he brings that's unique from the rest of the receiving corps?
Well, he's definitely a contested catch guy, like a James Washington. James Washington thrived on those combat catches. James Washington couldn't get off the line very well. He didn't win inside of the route. He didn't create space, didn't get open, but he could take those contested catches. George Pickens gives us a contested catch guy. Chase Claypool isn't that guy. Deontay isn't always that guy. This is definitely that guy that you see him streaking down the sideline. You throw it to him. You just throw it up there and let him go for it.
Yeah, I'm excited about the quarterback competition and what they're going to do in that first preseason game. But I cannot wait now to see what George Pickens does in his first preseason game, because if it's anything that's positive, look out for the hyperbole, the hype machine, the summer of George. Right? That's what it's going to be. That's what it already has been.
Summer of George. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. So we got a good question here.
Okay.
From Kathy. The real question asked here is, can George Pickens out backflip Martavis Bryant? That's an important question right there. Are we going to get the highlights and then some shenanigans? Are we going to get that? Oh man, that catch! I still remember that.
Yeah.
That flip he did to catch the ball.
That was incredible, and he kind of corralled it in between his legs as he went out of bounds, and he still got both feet in bounds. I mean, he had control of the ball. It was like Antonio Brown's helmet catch, but it was between his legs. But was it behind his back? I think it might have been behind his back or something.
Yeah, it was and then he somehow fumbled and it went like under his leg, and
yeah,
it was craziness.
I mean, yeah, that play he made at camp, I guess it was day 2 or day 3. I mean, that was obviously they kept showing the Troy Polamalu interception against the Chargers in 2008. And there was so much like that. But it just shows you just the athleticism and his concentration and his hunger to do that so early in camp. Even as a second round pick, you would think maybe he would feel like, all right, I'm a second round pick. I got this team made, but no, he's hungry to show them that maybe he should have been a first round pick. So yeah, I can't wait to see what he does in a game.
Oh yeah.
So you want to take some questions now?
Yeah, let's take some questions. Let's see. Right. Here's a good one from Tyler Cromie. Who do you think is going to be the most productive rookie by year's end?
Ooh. Well, I mean, come on. It's got to be George Pickens, right? I mean, we just spent 10 minutes waxing poetic about George Pickens. I think if the quarterback play is right, no matter who wins the job, George Pickens, he's gonna be a major weapon right as of right now. That's my prediction.
You think he's gonna outdo Kenny Pickett? You don't think Kenny's gonna step in and be that, take over that spot if he gets a chance?
I mean, ideally, I want him to, because I've always been an advocate of, if you draft a quarterback in the first round, you throw him in there right away and you let him learn on the job. But with Mitchell Trubisky in there, I think they're going to give him a long leash, at least a month. So I think by that point, maybe George Pickens will have established himself as a kind of rookie of the month kind of player, Jamar Chase kind of player. And by the end, it'll still be George Pickens.
Wow, you're putting him up there with Jamar Chase.
It's hype. I know it's so early. I can't help it.
You're riding the roller coaster here.
I know I am. But there's nothing else. It's all quarterback talk and George Pickens. That's all we've heard so far.
That's true.
At least that's all I've heard. So yeah, there's like Deontay Johnson stuff, but that's old.
Yeah, I'm liking a lot what I'm hearing about DeMarvin Leal looking good. And it looks like really the Steelers, from the way they're using the new guy, Larry Ogunjobi, and the way they're using these people, looks like they're really separating the 3-4 defensive end and the when they just do 2 interior defensive linemen for more of a pass rush. It looks like they're really splitting those kind of up, where you might see a guy like an Isaiah Loudermilk play as the defensive end with, a Tyson Alualu in the middle. Have Cam Hayward, Tyson Alualu, Isaiah Loudermilk in a 3-4 setup. But when there's only 2 defensive tackles, it's going to be like Cam Hayward, DeMarvin Leal, Larry Ogunjobi. It's going to be guys like that, Chris Wormley, that give them more pass rush and less run defense. It's interesting to see, and it's going to be interesting to see how they do that. But I think DeMarvin Leal could be a productive rookie. But I'm going to have to go with you too. I think George Pickens is going to put up some good numbers.
So you think Leal? You think he has it in him in that? I guess that formation to get to the passer, to get after the passer. Because I know his strength isn't necessarily stopping the run, right?
He's not bad at it, but he's more of a penetrator. He's a splitter. Get back there, cause some havoc, more than he is a, read the play, find the right, run lane to fill, that kind of stuff. He's much more attack. Whereas you've got a guy like Isaiah Loudermilk who holds the point of attack, works his way into the hole, just disrupts what you're trying to do. Whereas DeMarvin Leal is, let's go forward, let's get in the backfield, let's mess stuff up, let's create some havoc. So I think he could have a splash as a rookie if he gets those chances. And when you put him next to a guy like a Cameron Hayward, and you've got you think about it, it's going to go Alex Highsmith, Cameron Hayward, DeMarvin Leal, TJ Watt. DeMarvin Leal, if he's getting double teamed, you've done, either he is really that amazing or the offense is screwed up.
Right.
Because you got Cameron Hayward and TJ Watt.
Right.
The guy between them isn't the one you need to double team.
Right. Yeah. You don't want those guys one-on-one. That's a good point. So of these, the younger defensive linemen, including, obviously we just talked about Leal, who do you think has that chance to be, you kind of mentioned Loudermilk, be that effective run stopper for them in the future? Because obviously Alu is getting up there, and Cam Hayward's starting to, obviously, that was such a big problem for them last year. And everybody assumes with Alu back, it's going to be at least a little bit better in run defense. But is there anybody that you see that could possibly assume that role down the road if they continue to progress?
Well, I'm very excited to see Isaiah Loudermilk. He put on a lot of weight, did a lot of conditioning. Last year, I was surprised to see how little he actually played. When you look at final snap counts, it was something around 20% of snaps. It was incredibly low. You think of how many times you saw him, you think he played a lot more than he actually did.
Right.
But I think this year he's going to play a lot more. And the other guy, people got to remember, the run defense got a lot better when Montravius Adams showed up and took over those nose tackle snaps where no one else was holding the line. No one else was doing a good job there. And he really provided, one more solid defender there. So I think really they're, you've got Cameron Hayward, but after him, you've got Alualu, you've got Montravius Adams, you've got Isaiah Loudermilk. I think they're going to be they'll be a lot better in run defense than they were last year.
That's music to my ears. I sure hope so. And I think people forget that Adams was a 2017. He was the 3rd round pick by the Packers. So he has
he's not very old.
Yeah, he has the pedigree. He's bounced around a bit, I guess, but maybe he's found his home here, and that would be great because like you said, he's young and he seems to be fairly talented, and he helped them a lot last year down the stretch. So I'm excited about him too. So, you see any other great questions down here? I've been scrolling, trying to.
There we go.
How about this one from Steeler Nation 42? Ooh, here we go. This is a hot button topic right here. How much of a worthy contract is Johnson valued the most? What do you think?
Okay, I'm gonna go. How much of a contract is he worth?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my goodness. For me, I would. Man, I have a hard time giving him his value on the Steelers. Like, I think he's worth, and right now, with the market that was set this year, Deontay Johnson's a $20 million a year receiver. He's good enough to get that money.
Right.
But man, on the Steelers, the way the Steelers have drafted receivers to go from like rookie contracts, guys who are making, 4, 5, maybe even like up to $5 million a year to 20. Yeah. That's a lot of money to throw at a guy at a position where you've been able to replace people pretty easily. And I've said it before, we haven't seen him without Ben Roethlisberger, except for his rookie season where he was the number 2 receiver on the team. And then Ben Roethlisberger came back, and him and Ben Roethlisberger took off.
Right.
They had it together. But is he going to duplicate that with a Kenny Pickett? I mean, if the Steelers watch him and they're like, dude, Kenny Pickett and Deontay Johnson are going to be special together, then you say, well, maybe he's worth that to the Steelers then. But otherwise, he's the kind of guy that can go somewhere else and be just as open. He's still gonna run routes well. Right. And I think I got a question if it's worth it for the Steelers simply because of how they draft and develop receivers.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, I like Deontay Johnson. I think he's done a great job for he came into the league and right away he lost his franchise quarterback in the second game. And the offense has been kind of a mixed bag to worse than that his whole career. And he's still been productive. But I mean, people talk about this hold in and how it's going to hurt him, and other guys like Pickens and Claypool and Anthony Miller, maybe even him or in Austin are going to jump up and take his place. But I mean, those guys could all break their hands and they still are not going to pay him $20 million a year. I just don't see them doing that. I think they're just not, they haven't done that up to this point other than an all-time great like Hines Ward or Antonio Brown. And I don't see them breaking that precedent breaking that philosophy for Johnson. But I think at some point they're going to have to do that. They're going to have to pay a receiver market value, even if he's not Antonio Brown or Hines Ward. They're going to have to, because they might develop this reputation around the league that these guys don't pay their receivers, so let's hold out by year 3 instead of year 4. That might start happening. So eventually they might have to, like they did with TJ Watt last year, where they gave him all that guaranteed money, and they of course did it again this year with Fitzpatrick. They might have to change their philosophy on receivers. But right now it doesn't, there's so much to find out about the quarterback and what kind of offense is going to be. So maybe it's not something that they're going to worry about until season's end. But if he shows out this year, then it might be 25-30 million instead of 20. So, but I agree. I don't think they value receivers like other teams do.
All right. Next question. Here's a good one. Steelers Nation 412. Is this a boom or bust year for Chase Claypool?
Boom or bust?
Yeah. Is this the year, like, the way I'm reading is this a big decision year? Is this the year he has to show up or maybe show his way out?
Well, I think it was year 3, right? So I anticipate him being better this year than he was last year. Honestly, because I think his attitude's better this year. I think he realizes that some of the stuff that he said at the end of his rookie year, and then the things that he did last year with the first down celebration, was that against the Vikings or Chargers, whatever that game was.
Yep.
I think that it maybe woke him up a bit, and of course drafting George Pickens and bringing him in here, and I think he seemed like a pretty level-headed, mature guy when he first came here, and then he started saying things on social media and that kind of ruffled the feathers of people, and he had that incident in 2021, the offseason, the little scuffle at that bar. But maybe year 3, he's going to finally come into his own and be more of a professional. So I don't think this is a boom or bust, but I think that this is going to be his a much better year than he had in last year anyway.
Yeah, I think we're going to see, I don't think we're going to see any of the receivers really take off stats wise, just because I don't expect us to throw it as much.
Right.
And maybe even if we're more efficient, maybe it's the same kind of yardage. But I expect, Pat Freiermuth, I think his numbers are going to go up. Maybe Najee Harris's numbers go down. He had an incredible amount of receptions last year. I think he was third on the team, second or third on the team in receptions. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, some yards, there's going to be some yards there to gain, but I don't think anyone's going to have a ridiculous season simply because the Steelers aren't going to be a big time passing offense. They're going to try and be more balanced than they have in the past.
So you think whoever wins the starting job, it's going to be closer to a game manager type of a role, as opposed to putting the offense on his back and throwing it 50 times a game like Ben did in his prime.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. Not with any of these guys. Like Pickett's a rookie. Mason Rudolph, you don't want him throwing the ball 40 times a game, 35 times a game. You don't want that. 20 to 25 times. If you can win a game where the quarterback threw 18 times, great.
Yeah,
if you're having them throw 30 times a game, Steelers are probably not winning a lot. That's
probably a good point. And or that is a good point, I should say. Not probably a good point, it is a good point. But speaking of that, something we hadn't seen a lot in Roethlisberger's latter years, I'd say the last 10 years, is the play action. People were clamoring for that for years. Do you see that as a bigger part of the offense this year, as far as maybe opening up some things downfield, or making the ground game more effective, or do you see them doing just as much shotgun as they always have?
Well, you go back to when Mitchell Trubisky was starting in Chicago, and they were when you look at RPOs, run pass options, and play action passes, they were near the top of the league in both. A lot of teams will have a lot of RPOs or a lot of play action. He was towards the top in both, and they were effective. So I think that Matt Canada wants that in his offense. He showed that a lot in college. He did a lot of play action. He did a lot of RPOs, and Mitchell Trubisky did a ton as an NFL player for the Chicago Bears. So I definitely think we're going to see not just a lot more. We're going to be one of the higher teams in the NFL in both RPOs run and play action passes. We're going to be way up there in the NFL simply because that's this offense, and that's what they're going to need to do. That's what they want to do, and that's what Mitchell Trubisky is good at.
Awesome. It kind of puts into perspective why they signed him. And so basically what you're saying is Matt Canada is going to have the whole playbook available to his quarterbacks this year. It's going to be the authentic Matt Canada offense, and not a marriage between Matt Canada and what we saw last year with Ben. It's going to be the true Matt
throw
Canada.
In one caveat there that Ben was a big part of it, but the other part was the offensive line couldn't execute a lot of the outside zone stuff. Trey Turner could not do outside zone. They brought in the center they brought in, and James Daniels, the guard, both come from very outside zone heavy offenses. In my opinion, the Kevin Dotson, Kendrick Green competition is about Kevin Dotson being able to do things like an outside zone offense, where it's more about lateral mobility and being able to block while moving side to side, which is not his strength. That is a strength of Kendrick Green. So obviously when the team had to go away from the outside zone, Kendrick Green's best part of his game disappeared. And so like, what was he worth at that point? When he's moving a lot, when he's running around, he's better. So while I still love the guard that just grabs somebody and pushes them out of the way. Love a nice people mover, an Alifanica type. So I love Kevin Dotson. I love watching him play football. But that competition to me is straight up about Kevin Dotson's ability to run outside zone, which is not his strength, versus that being Kendrick Green's strength, and this team wanting to be a team that runs that.
Awesome. That's an awesome. Yeah. Insight. I remember a few months ago listening to some radio segment with Jerry Dulac, who's a longtime insider, and I mentioned this before. And they asked him, who do you think's going to win the starting left guard spot? And he surprised the host by saying Kendrick Green. But when you lay it out that way with the zone blocking and his athleticism, that was a big thing of his. That was a big positive of his coming out of college last year. That makes sense that maybe that's why he feels that Green is going to come in and beat out Dotson, who, I mean, everybody loved the guy in 2020. And of course, he went into the offseason as the presumed starter for 2022, but they drafted Kendrick Green in the 3rd round. So they're going to want to get him in the lineup somewhere. And if it's not at center, it's got to be at guard, and it's not going to be right guard with James Daniels. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting battle to watch, especially when they start on Monday morning with the pads, or Monday afternoon, I should say. Here's a question from Sherry Richards, and this is another controversial question. Do you believe Canada about Mason having a real shot to start, or are they trying to up his value for a trade? What do you think?
Okay, this is going to go straight to my preseason evaluation is the same as my practice evaluation. I've talked about it on some of my podcasts last year. But the 3 R's, there's 3 R's here. Your rank, your role, and your results. And it's in that order is how I look at you. Your ranking is where you play, where the team plays you in the depth chart. If you're the 2nd string guy, that's how the team sees you. If they saw Mason Rudolph as a guy who is equal to Mitchell Trubisky, Mason Rudolph would be getting snaps with the first team. And I think in week 2, if you see Mason Rudolph getting snaps with the first team, then that means something. But until he takes first team snaps, no, he's not being given a chance to win that job. I also know, like, people talk about Mitchell Trubisky struggling and Mason Rudolph looking good. Yeah. Well, who's the first team defense? TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Miles Jack, Minkah Fitzpatrick. Mason Rudolph's going against other guys. Like, he's going against their backup. Derek Tuska, like Buddy Johnson, Robert Spillane, Trey Norwood back there on free safety at times. Like, that's not the same. You're not facing the same caliber opponent. And the drop-off from George Pickens to Anthony Miller to whatever that is not the same as the drop-off from TJ Watt to Derek Tuska. It's a little bit different. So for me, when you see Mason Rudolph competing against the ones, that means he is, in their minds, done enough to earn a legit shot at starting. Until that happens, it's not real.
It's not real. It's you think it's a foregone conclusion at this point that Trubisky starts week 1, or at least that's their plan. That's how they want it to go. And it would have to, somebody would have to come up and blow by Trubisky, or he would have to really bleep the bed for them to go to somebody else.
Oh yeah, I firmly believe that they want Mitchell Trubisky to be the guy. And I will go second and say, I think every Steelers fan is going to want this, unless you're specifically a Mason Rudolph fan. You want Kenny Pickett to overtake Mason Rudolph.
Right.
By the end of this camp, you're really hoping Mason Rudolph is your number 3. Because at that point, that means Trubisky's going, and Kenny Pickett has played well enough to earn snaps with the 2s, and then actually took that job from Mason Rudolph. If Mason Rudolph is competing for snaps for the 1, you've got to question where you are. I don't think you're going to see a big leap from Mason Rudolph at this point, especially as the offense is going farther away from his skill set. He's not an RPO run first guy. He's not that guy. I don't think that fits him as well. He can do it better than Ben Roethlisberger could, but I don't think that's his strengths. So for me, if Mason Rudolph is competing for the ones, it's not the best sign for anyone but him.
It's more of an indictment of the other two than it is a compliment to him, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
The only thing that gives me pause after the first 4 days is you're hearing things that you didn't hear in the past from guys like Jim Wexell, who's a longtime insider, that his poise it looks so much better, and he looks so much calmer than he has in the past. And yeah, you might say, well, they're going against number twos and they're not wearing pads. But my thing is, when your employer does what they did, you go out and you sign Mitch Trubisky, and then a month later you draft Kenny Pickett. To me, that would mess with my head psychologically, and I'm not sure if I could show up to camp and be confident at that point. Like, they're clearly trying to replace me, but maybe he just feels like he has nothing to lose. I don't know, but evidently the confidence is better, and he seems more comfortable than he ever has in the past. So that's one thing that gives me pause about Mason Rudolph. I just think no matter who wins the job, if that guy goes on if that guy's really good, then it's going to be a great story. If it's Mason Rudolph by default, then that's not a good sign. That's not a good thing. So you see any other questions that are tantalizing?
Here's the front here. Well, here's one that works with what we've just been talking about, and I lose it right as I say that. How short a leash will Mitchell Trubisky be on, though? So, Tony, let's say they stick with Trubisky. He's not looking the greatest. He goes into the regular season. They're starting him. How short of a leash before a Mason Rudolph or Kenny Pickett comes in, do you think, if with Mitchell Trubisky starting?
Well, with Trubisky being a veteran and having a bit of a track record in the NFL, and for them to sign him at the really before free agency officially began in March, I think they'll give him 4 weeks. I think they'll give him a month to see if maybe he's a little out of sorts with the new offense, with his new team, new surroundings, and he just needs a month to get things going. The Steelers being the Steelers, they don't overreact usually. So I see them giving him 4 weeks. If it were Mason Rudolph, maybe a week or two, or even, Kenny Pickett. I think if they threw Kenny Pickett in there right away, they'd probably give him the whole season, because I think they would just say, all right, he's a rookie. But if it's Mitch Trubisky, I'd give him, I'd say it'll give him a month.
I agree with you. I think Mitchell Trubisky gets a good amount of time. The Kenny Pickett push, I'll give you this. The push for Kenny Pickett to start, circle week 10, right after the bye week. If they're going to make a switch to a different quarterback, especially with going to Pickett, you're going to want that extra week. That's where teams normally do kinds of things like that. That's where rookies, the Steelers always get rookies more involved in the offense after the bye week. We saw that with Pat Freiermuth. He was showing up. He was doing great stuff. It wasn't until the bye week that they stepped up his role on the team substantially. That's what they normally do. So that week 10, 8 games into the season, about halfway into the season, if the team is struggling, that's where you could see, Kenny Pickett kind of step in and push for that. Before then, if you're taking him out, if you're taking Trubisky out, most likely it's Mason Rudolph going in.
That's a good point. When you say struggling, what would you consider struggling? Would it be around 500, or would it be, hopelessly out of the playoff race?
Well, I don't think we'll be hopelessly out of the playoff race, because I'm very high on this defense. But if they're not moving the ball well, if he's not getting the ball downfield well, if you're not seeing some deep passes being caught, if the other team is being able to kind of load the box like they were last year and even late in 2020, and just kind of overload the offensive line like that, that's when you're going to see a Kenny Pickett get worked into there, because they're not going to want this. You've got to have something from this offense. This defense can carry the load for this team, but the offense, they can't do it if the offense isn't producing. And we saw that last year in the playoffs game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Nobody held the Chiefs scoreless for 6 straight drives in like 3 years. Right. The Steelers defense did that, and in fact scored a touchdown. They actually, over the first 6 drives, the Steelers defense not only shut down the Chiefs, they outscored them themselves. But you can't do that all game if the offense can't even get a first down. I think they had 2 first downs by the time the Chiefs had gone on they were going on their 7th drive, and the Steelers had 2 first downs. The defense can't hold it like that. You can't be just sending them back out there every single drive, back out there again. TJ Watt, they're going to get tired. Those guys are going to get tired. Then you take them out. The other team suddenly can find a rhythm. This offense has to be moving the ball, has to be eating clock, has to be letting the defense rest, and has to be producing in the games.
Yeah, last year it was such a hard offense to watch. I mean, week in and week out. I mean, I can't remember one game where the offense looked explosive or looked like it was being consistent. There was never any real rhythm with this offense at all last year. And Troy Polamalu, and who would know better than him? He was pretty adamant about that. After the like back during the Bruce Arians throw it deep that era, he said, we're being exposed too much on defense, and that's hurting us. And that's why we're not getting the production that we had in the past. Of course, a lot of it too was they were just getting old. But I mean, if Troy Polamalu says it, and so many other people who know football say the defense should not be out on the field that much. When it is, it gets exposed, it gets tired. You need an offense that can at least take time off the clock, and they did that very little last year. I can't really remember one game. That Titans game, I mean, the offense, I mean, I think when did it get past midfield? It was like late in the 3rd quarter. It was unbelievable. Yeah. I still can't believe they won that game.
Yeah.
Here's a question from AJC from YouTube, and they ask, who has a higher ceiling, Claypool or Johnson? What do you think?
Oof. For ceiling, I see that's a hard thing for me. I'm not I argue about upside. I'm always like upside, like what is that? What is upside?
Yeah.
What is your ceiling? So for receivers, I'm going to say when you're looking at a player who could be a number 1 receiver, the one question I really have about Deontay Johnson is his production on deeper passes, downfield passes. Antonio Brown was incredibly productive short, but he was also really productive deep.
Mm-hmm.
Deontay Johnson's very productive on short routes. He has not been productive on deep routes. If you look at other players, they are more. Even the last couple of seasons, Chase Claypool is far more productive on deeper routes than Deontay Johnson was. And Claypool wasn't productive enough.
Right.
I mean, you could go through and look at a lot of highlights and a lot of plays from Chase Claypool and say, oh my gosh, what's he doing? Like, he's falling to the ground. He's turning around. He's, all that. And he was still far more productive on deeper throws than Deontay Johnson was. If Johnson can turn that around, then it's Deontay Johnson. But from what I've seen, I'm actually going to go Chase Claypool. I think we saw in his rookie season, before Ben had the hip problem, whatever it is, it just cost him his ability to throw the ball deep with accuracy, reliably, and the timing. When he had 2.5 seconds to throw, Chase Claypool and Ben Roethlisberger were tearing teams apart.
Oh yeah.
When he didn't, he was dumping the ball to Deontay Johnson and hoping Johnson could do something with it because that's all they had. Right.
Yeah, I think physically, there's no question that Chase Claypool is more impressive, and I think he's capable of maybe being a bigger weapon. But I think Johnson's more polished as an overall receiver. I think he reminds. Yeah. They said this coming out of college, but when you look at the way he plays, he does remind you a lot of like maybe a poor man's Antonio Brown. Maybe that's why Ben loved him so much and has such a great connection with him on the field. But you did see a lot. You did see a few big plays from his rookie year. With Mason, and I think maybe even Duck Hodges hit him a couple of times, but he did have some deeper passes his rookie year, so maybe he has that in him.
He was better then.
Yeah, maybe he just got kind of caught up in the whole 3 yards in a cloud of dust passing offense they were doing the last couple of years. I don't know, but yeah,
2 seconds in an injured quarterback.
There you go. That's even better. 2 seconds in injured quarterback passing offense, but. They definitely. I think Claypool has the better upside, as you said, whatever that means. I always wonder what that means too. He has a higher ceiling. Well, how do you know? How do you know he has a higher ceiling? See, do we have anything else here?
I've got a question here.
Okay.
All right. Lon Campbell from YouTube says, "Is there a number 1 corner on this roster?"
That's a good question.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
And these practices don't do these cornerbacks any favors. Because you can't really physically hit anyone. You can't really touch them.
Right. Yeah. I think those are the 5 guys that probably should be cut every day based on the last 4 days. Because, as you said, you can't really do anything. But, I mean, if you like, I would, it seems weird to say Levi Wallace because, he was undrafted free agent in 2018 and he was brought in here, I think, maybe to be the number 2. But when Trey White got hurt last year, Wallace assumed that role. And I mean, obviously he's not Trey White, but he did a pretty decent job for them down the stretch. And that playoff game was a disaster for that whole defense. But maybe it's Levi Wallace. I mean, Witherspoon has potential, obviously, based on how he finished last year and his pedigree. And Cam Sutton, I think, he's just an overall great player. But I'd say maybe Levi Wallace right now.
Yeah, I think he is going to step into what we would call that role. But in my opinion, Tony, I don't think Joe Hayden was a true number 1 corner at any point in his time with the Steelers. He was our best corner.
Right.
But he wasn't that guy you sit there and say, hey, Jamar Chase is over there, Joe. At any time, 2017 on, you wouldn't have said, Joe, go lock him down one-on-one.
Take him out of the game.
Right. You're not going to do that. He wasn't that guy anymore. I don't think we have, in that sense of it, a true number 1 corner on the roster. If you're looking for a guy to just say, hey, cover that dude and don't worry about anything else but that guy, you'd almost have to go with Ahkello Witherspoon. Because he's your best pure cover guy. But there's so much of the game that he struggles at, and the more he plays, the more you risk him getting exposed and other teams just going after his weaknesses. He's shown that time and time again. I'd love to believe he's turned the corner, but he's done this before, right? We've seen this before in other teams.
Yeah.
So for me, I would say we don't have a number 1 corner. I would say we have 2 number 2 corners, or actually 3 number 2 style corners. But the way the Steelers run their defense, that's kind of what they want.
Right.
That's kind of what they want
forever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how they do it. Like the last, I don't have a problem with it. I think it'll work out fine. People don't remember even that 2005 Super Bowl season. Ike Taylor wasn't that guy yet.
No.
Like Ike Taylor played. Brian McFadden was a rookie that year, and Ike Taylor got benched.
Yeah,
multiple times. He got benched that season. Got benched the next season. He wasn't Ike Taylor yet. Right, he wasn't the Ike Taylor we think of yet. They won the Super Bowl. Why? Because they had Troy. They had that year. They had Chris Hope. Was that still Chris Hope, or no? Was that Ryan Clark already?
That was Ryan Clark by 06.
That was Ryan Clark. But you had those safeties.
Right.
You had the pass rush, and they didn't have to have a number 1 corner. So I wouldn't say there's a true number 1 corner on this roster, but I'm not sure the Steelers actually need one.
Well, that I remember that 06 that disastrous 06 season where Cowher was chewing out Taylor on the sideline and telling him to get the bleep back on the field. I'm like, this is the guy that was the hero in the Super Bowl in the playoffs last year, and he's being chewed out by Cowher. That brings me. I have a follow-up question to that. Because I'm intrigued by this guy. We were all intrigued by him last summer, and then he kind of fell off at the end. He lost his job at Witherspoon. What do you see in James Pierre this year? Do you think he can make a leap at all, or do you think he hit his ceiling last year and he's always going to be a kind of a fringe player or a backup kind of corner?
Well, I'm a huge fan of James Pierre on special teams. If you want a fun time, watch him on punts when he's the gunner. Watch him blocking gunners. The dude is fantastic. He doesn't just get results. He has flair about it too. There's some of the stuff he does that I love watching him do those special teams plays. For me, he's a lock because of that. As for his role on defense, James Pierre is a dime cornerback, maybe a nickel, maybe. Like we would talk about Mike Hilton not being great in coverage. James Pierre is a rung below Mike Hilton. But if you're the dime guy, and you're mostly in short zones or deep, but you don't have to do both, right? If you're a guy who can sit there and say, if this receiver runs past me, I let him go and I'm picking up this other guy short, or I'm deep and I just pick up whoever runs towards me. With some of the way the Steelers run some of their defenses, that's a play James Pierre can do. The Steelers last year, when they put him into the top 2, they were running a lot of man. He was their number 2 corner. He's out there in man. especially that Cincinnati game where he's in man on T. Higgins and just getting absolutely destroyed.
Right.
That's where you can't have a James Pierre. If he is your starting cornerback, you are in so much trouble.
Right.
But the same would be said of Trey Norwood. You don't want Trey Norwood being your starting cornerback.
Right.
And they put James Pierre out there in front of him. You don't want Arthur Millette being your starting outside corner.
No, definitely not.
You didn't want Mike Hilton.
Right.
How many times did Mike Hilton go and play outside corner? He didn't.
No.
So for me, James Pierre has a role as long as the Steelers can keep him in that role, and not have to put him up as a number 2 corner, because that was not him.
And you don't see any growth in that area for him, like maybe working his way up, or is that he's just such an unknown that you can't really predict at this point?
I honestly think it's his athletic profile.
Okay.
Right. He's a little slower. He's like old Joe Hayden speed, like 2019, 2020 Joe Hayden, but he does not have the skills Joe Hayden had developed over time to compensate as he lost a bit of speed over time. He was so good at so many things. Like he would do this thing where Joe Hayden would grab a wide receiver right here. And you had to like watch and see. You have to pick up when he did it. And I learned to watch for it, but he would grab him right there. Ref never saw it. And he'd just be like, slow down, young guy.
Right.
Slow it down a little bit. Let's just run. And you're gonna slow down a bit so I can stay with you. James Pierre is going to get caught. He got those penalties because he didn't know how to do it. Like Joe Hayden knew how to slip it in there and not get caught. So for me, like he's starting there. He's not gonna become that guy because he doesn't have the chance really to be, that kind of a player. So I don't see that developing. I don't see that changing.
Yeah, the odds. I say the odds are pretty long. I mean, like when you have these undrafted free agents, it's always exciting until you see them play for a full season. Then you're like, oh, okay. And more often than not, that's why they were an undrafted free agent. That's why they proved why they weren't why they were missed by the entire league on draft day, or draft weekend.
Yep.
All right. Let's see if we have anything else here. Here's one. This is one that I definitely can't answer, so I'll draw it up for you. How do you see a 3 safety system working? That's from Jeremy Krewalt. Maybe that's Clint Krewalt's brother. I don't know.
All right. For me, there's one key factor here. Actually, there's two. There's 2 key factors here. One is Minkah Fitzpatrick is at his best when he's not in single high safety. He's not a pure single high free safety cover 1 type of guy. Like the Bengals free safety. If you just want to run cover 1, I can't remember who the guy the Bengals have. I can't remember his name right now. But him, Denver has like Justin Simmons. There's some players out there that are better cover 1 safeties than Minkah Fitzpatrick. He's
Jesse
not
Bates?
that guy. Yeah, Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates. He's not those guys. That's not his best usage. He is the most dangerous when he can be more of a roamer, be a little bit of a wild card, and be up in those intermediate zones where he's jumping slant routes and post routes and doing stuff like that, not covering deep. He can do it, but that's not his best usage. DeMonte Kazi, that's 100% his best usage. He is a single high safety center fielder type of player. That's the number 1 factor. And the number 2 is last year, Terrell Edmunds led all Steelers in slot cornerback snaps. Like playing where you picture the nickel back being or the dime back, covering a slot receiver. Terrell Edmunds lined up covering a slot receiver more than anyone else on this defense. That's a big sign to me because not only does he provide good coverage there, especially in man, he is a good man cover guy, not like top of the line cornerback, but he's as good as most of our cornerbacks are at man coverage. And he gives you more options for stopping the run there. He gives you more help in the box. So I really think you could see Terrell Edmunds in the slot in a nickel package if they're kind of worried that team's going to run on you and you don't want to put Cam Sutton in the slot to face like a run play. You can put a Terrell Edmunds in there. Steelers did that last year a lot, partly because they'd come out in 7-man. They come out in a 7-man front to try and stop the run. And the other team has 3 wide receivers out there. They'd be like, okay, Terrell, you're now our nickel corner. And we still got 7 in the box because we need them in there. Like we can't stop the run.
It's so funny that, cause I mean, obviously again, your X's and O's and so many other people who know football, they talk about the things that Edmonds brings to the table as far as coverage and playing these different roles. And yet, this past off season, he couldn't find a suitor. And then the Steelers got him back for 1 year for $2.5 million. It just seems weird that he would be so undervalued, especially this off season when, everybody was flush with salary cap room compared to the year before. And yet, he had to come back for people keep calling it a prove it year deal, but what more does he have to prove? He's a solid player. He's never going to be, Troy Polamalu. That's just not who he is, but he's a really good, valuable durable starting safety. And he just doesn't get any respect.
Wait, Tony, there are 5 safeties, 5 players who play safety that were signed this offseason by the Steelers. Mm-hmm. You had Marcus Allen, Miles Killebrew, Carl Joseph, Terrell Edmonds, and Deontay Johnson. Do you want to guess where Terrell Edmonds ranks on that list? As far as the Steelers' salary cap commitment to him?
I can't imagine it being much above 5.
It was 4th.
Oh,
and you know who 5th? What? You know who was 5th? Deontay Johnson.
I knew it wasn't Marcus Allen. I know that much.
Yeah, Marcus Allen is number 1.
That's
Miles
insane.
Killebrew, and then Carl Joseph.
It just doesn't make any sense.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing with these guys.
I don't get it.
We're all excited about the Kazi sign. People are like, man, can Deontay Kazi beat out Terrell Edmonds for the starting job? Maybe we should be talking more about Marcus Allen. Hopefully not. But
right. Yeah. That's
who knows what the Steelers are planning? I don't know. It baffled me then. It baffles me today. Terrell Edmonds was signed to what's called a 4-year qualifying offer. Basically the old veteran minimum contract.
Mm-hmm.
They revamped the veteran minimum contract. That's what Terrell Edmonds signed. He costs far less on the salary cap than what they pay him because it's a minimum contract.
Yeah, it's. I just don't get it. I don't get it. And it feeds into that long-running narrative that he was a bust. He's a bust, which he's not a bust. He's a really good player. He's just not. He's not Micah Fitzpatrick. He's not Troy Polamalu. He's not that kind of safety, but he's still really, really good.
And also, Marcus Allen, Miles Killebrew, and Carl Joseph were all Steelers last season. And Terrell Edmonds led the team in snaps on defense. He led the entire defense in snaps. He played more than anyone else. Those 3 were still there on the roster, and the Steelers were like, who's more valuable than Terrell Edmonds? These 3 guys. These 3 guys.
What did it? Yeah, what did they always say about who was the Big Dan? What was his name? The lineman that never.
Yeah, Big Dan McCullers.
Yeah, he always made the team. Yeah, the shade tree. Yeah, he must have something on Mike Tomlin. Well, apparently they have something on Terrell Edmonds, and they're lowballing him and forcing him to play it at the vet minimum. It's crazy. But
then Kazi's even lower because he also got a qualifying offer, but he's been around, so his is even cheaper. I don't understand.
Maybe they're just they bought into the Steeler way, or at least Kazi did. Obviously Edmonds wanted the money, but it just didn't work out for him. But
yeah.
So what do you think, Jeffrey? Do you want to take any more questions, or you want to call it a night? We're coming up on an hour.
I'm looking to see if there's one more we could do here, maybe, but I think we're pretty good.
Yeah, we had a pretty good crew
We're a little
tonight.
over time.
Yeah, we were a little over time. We should probably head out. But wait a minute, I think I saw did I see a super chat? Maybe not. Maybe I just clicked. Maybe I just turned it blue by mistake. Anyway, if it is a super chat, I'm sorry I missed it. But thank you for that. Well, I'll scroll down a little bit more. Maybe I missed it. Did I? Live radio. Oh, there it is. Here we go. Wow. This is the guy that I met a couple weeks ago. Where do I find it?
There it is. There.
Did I get it?
There you go.
There we go.
I got you.
He and Thardo thank you. Thardo Barbera, $2. He donates, and thank you for that. And he says, Tony from Kelly says, Tony, join my cult. Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. For $2, a cult. I mean, there's a lot more. I'm going to need a lot more to join a cult. That's gonna people should have people questioning my my life, and I'm going to lose friends. So, but yeah, that's I'll think about it.
As long as it's not like some Mason Rudolph cult, okay? You guys, like,
well,
no.
Well, I've already been drinking that. I've been dabbling in that Kool-Aid this offseason. I did it at first as a lark. Now I'm starting to believe it. So I don't know. Maybe there's no hope for me. Yeah, maybe I'm slipping into the Mason Rudolph abyss. But on that note, let's call it a night. What do you say?
Yeah. Hey, it's been a great show, man.
It's been a great show. Fantastic. We had a lot of great football talk. Big crew. And don't forget to check back each and every day. Check our podcasting family, our podcast family. Jeffrey has a great show. When's your show come out, Jeffrey? Your solo podcast, your audio.
Mine comes out Tuesday, right around lunchtime. That's the cutting room floor. I'm going to be talking about, of course, training camp and stuff, and mostly what it all means, what we can take away from training camp. So look forward to that one.
That's great stuff. And of course, you're on the curtain call with Shannon White every Wednesday night, right? And there's usually a
curtain
guest.
Call finale, the finale of the curtain call for this year. As you know, once the games start, it turns into Know Your Enemy. And that's the crazy thing. This is the last Wednesday before the preseason week. The Wednesday, so we got today.
2 weeks.
Wednesday. The Wednesday after that is we're going to be previewing the Steelers' first preseason opponent. I think it's the Seahawks.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be talking about the Seahawks.
I can't believe it. I mean, it seemed like just yesterday the Steelers were getting blown out in a wild card game, and now they're about to play their first preseason game. But you can find me tomorrow, Monday night, on The Hangover with Brian and Shannon. But until then, you guys have a great night. For Jeffrey Benedict, I'm Tony Defio, and as always, I got to do the music. So speaking to Brian, so he doesn't yell at me. Let's see if I can find it. Wow, what a show! What a here we are.
Oh, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. A lot of great comments.
It's been a ton of fun. See you guys.